You guys love PSP content. I love creating PSP content. So let's do this. These are the 3 games I've been playing on my PSP this week. Come to think of it, I really should make this a weekly segment here because PSP games always perform well on the channel. I love jumping into the PSP library because I must admit, this is my white PSP Go. It's the latest edition in my PSP collection. And I never played a lot of actual PSP games on it. Ever since I bought it, I kind of mostly stuck with emulators. And now it's time to actually dive into the PSP library. The PSP had a lot of really amazing games. And there's nothing I love more than spreading the word about some of my favorite PSP games. This week, there were 3 that I've been playing. So I'm gonna start us off with one that I wish had gotten more recognition, even though it actually would receive a 3DS port some years down the road. It's a game that was received very well at the time, but just didn't perform well sales-wise. I'm talking about Crush. Crush is an interesting puzzle game. So in it, you play the role of Danny, this young man who suffers from insomnia. So he goes to this crazy doctor, Dr. Doc Dockerson, I think that's his name, who developed this experimental hypnosis machine. I forget what it stands for. This is what it stands for right there on the screen. And obviously the acronym is Crush. So it's an interesting puzzle game. You're exploring Danny's subconscious while he sleeps. So you start out seeing a level in 3D, and there's a bunch of marbles which you're supposed to collect. Get it? Because he lost his marbles. And in order to reach all the places in the map, you have to crush the map from 3D to 2D. Now, if this sounds like Paper Mario for the Wii, which came out around the same time, yes, the premise is kind of similar. Though, and I will probably get some flack for this, I actually prefer this game's interpretation of that gameplay mechanic. I think it works better in a puzzle game. So that's the whole gist of the game. You look at the map, you move around, and then you crush so that what was 3D becomes 2D, and through that you're able to access areas where you couldn't before. And the whole idea is that you're going to rotate the camera to position the 3D area in such a way that when you crush, you can get to a certain platform, you can push a certain object, you can make a jump, and that's the idea. The game gets more complex as you go along, of course, and you start having to fight monsters, you have to push items. Like most puzzle games, there is a, you gotta collect them all kind of element. So there's moments in the game that when you crush the map, a certain image will illuminate, and in that moment, an item will appear, and then you have to make your way there. Of course, it's not always so obvious where you're supposed to go, so it's tricky, or maybe I'm just stupid. Even though the mechanics get compared a lot to Super Paper Mario, I should add that this game was actually developed many years before. So it was just, parallel thinking, I guess. Next up is a game that is a bit of an unlikely favorite of mine because I don't really like sports video games. In fact, I don't like sports in general. This one, however, I kind of have a soft spot for. I'm talking about Virtua Tennis 3. Now, what's interesting about this game is that unlike most PSP titles where they would take a PlayStation game and then shrink it down to pocket size, this is actually an Xbox 360 port. And it's everything looks exactly the way it looked on the Xbox 360, and it really drove home the idea that the PSP was really a console that you carry with you in your pocket. Around the same time, Nintendo was going a different route with the DS, and not to say that it wasn't great. I have several DSs, I love the console. But when you wanted to experience something that you commonly find on a home console, the PSP was the system to go, and Virtua Tennis 3 is a great example of that. All the modes are there. You can even play multiplayer with a friend that happens to have a PSP and a copy of the game. There is a ton of modes, but I've always been a bit of a casual player when it comes to these games. I always go into exhibition, just pick, a quick match, and I love it. The gameplay is great. It's very simple, but it's so engaging. You move around the tennis court, you have to anticipate where the ball is gonna be, you press X to hit the ball, and then you move the analog in the direction that you want the ball to go. I'm not using proper tennis lingo, I realize that. I'm sure I'll be corrected in the comments. It's a great game for pick up and play. I never go into like the more in-depth modes like competitions and campaign and all that. I don't ever look at it. I go right into exhibition, I just play a quick match, and it's a lot of fun. Gameplay is simple, but complex enough that the matches are very exciting. Like basically you run around the court, you kind of anticipate where the ball is gonna go, you hit X when you're just about to hit it, and then you move the analog in the direction that you'd like the ball to go. It's really fun trying to corner the computer into always going to one place, and then when he's really far into the court, you can just send the ball in the opposite direction. You see them sprawling on the ground trying to get it. It's great. I don't have a whole lot to say about this game. It's tennis. It's a lot of fun. And if you ever played Virtua Tennis before, this is a pitch perfect port. Pitch perfect port. Try saying that 3 times fast. Speaking of pitch perfect ports, this next game is one that really showed what the PSP could do. I've been playing God of War Chain of Olympus, and I gotta say, I have God of War Ragnarok, and it's a great game, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't feel like classic God of War to me. It's, again, great game, but as I was diving into Chain of Olympus, I'm really reminded of what the game used to be like on the PS2. Now, this game is a prequel to God of War, which is interesting, and it is amazing. What they were able to, Ready at Dawn, the developer, which infamously returned their dev kits to Sony as a means to protest how much piracy there was on the PSP back in the day. They were masters of porting games to the PSP, and Chain of Olympus plays exactly like the PS2 games. If you're a fan of PS2 style God of War games, you have to try this. You have to check it out. The environments are beautiful, movement is fluid, the game is, you have all the combos, you have everything. It's just like on the PS2, including quick time events. Now, I'm not sure how you feel about them. They got a lot of flack back in the day. It was a really interesting way to insert like a really cool cinematic into the game, but that was still interactive. So, you know, it was interesting jumping back into that. I have never been a huge fan of QuickTime events, but seeing it for the first time on the small screen reminded me of what it was like to play that on the PS2. And it's just, like I said, it's like playing a PS2 game. I think today we're jaded by having like, you know, amazing games on our phones even, but seeing that running on the PSP brought me back to the first time I saw that running on the PSP. And it made me think, holy crap, this is a PlayStation Portable. Like, no joke, no, there's truth in advertisement here. Anyway, these are 3 amazing games that I've been diving into. I'm loving them. If I were to pick one from the 3, this is hard because they all kind of, you know, fit different, like, if I feel like thinking, then I go with Crush. If I feel like just a quick game, just, you know, to turn off my brain and enjoy a quick match, you know, Virtua Tennis is perfect for that. And if I want to really get into like what the PSP is supposed to be, because this is the whole concept, right? That was the whole idea. That's how Sony set the PSP apart from what Nintendo was offering at the time. This is a PlayStation in your pocket. You'd be hard-pressed to find a game that better solidifies that concept than God of War Chain of Olympus. It's just amazing. Anyway, like I said, I want to create more PSP content here. I miss this type of content, so expect more of these videos. Anyway, if you like this content, make sure to hit a like. I've been away from YouTube for a little while and the algorithm really doesn't like us when we do that. Please remember to hit like, that helps the channel a lot. It takes you a second, but it would mean the world to me. Follow me on social media if you haven't already. I'm very active on both Twitter and Instagram. The links are all down below. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy and I'm done. But this one, I have a soft spot for it. But this one, I kind of have a soft spot for. But this one, I kind of have a soft spot for. But this one, I kind of have a soft spot. I cannot say soft spot. Soft spot, why is that tripping me up? I'm making so many mistakes tonight. The blooper reel for this video would be longer than the actual video.